to Stories from Real Life, a podcast by engaging storytellers for engaged story listeners. Here's your host.
Hello again, and welcome to this week's episode of Stories from Real Life. I'm your host, Melvin E. Edwards. Thanks for joining me on this week's learning adventure. Our guest this week is the founder of the Mentor Project, Dr. Deborah Heiser. Hello, Deborah, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. So this is a storytelling podcast, and passing along stories is one way that humans have unofficially mentored the next generation. Do you think storytelling for a purpose is becoming a lost art?
Absolutely. I think that it's something that's there and we all crave it and want it. And we just have to reactivate it because our storytelling is really what has passed down religion for centuries, all of our traditions, our values, every holiday that we have. And we say, oh yeah, we do this all the time. If you try to trace it back to who started it, you'll have a hard time figuring that out. So storytelling is like that. We need that in our lives. And so I hope that we'll be able to reignite that.
So what do you think it'll take?
I think it'll take, people really with the change in technology, I think have to get used to storytelling in a new format and in a new way. Like those who liked to read and don't anymore, podcasts. Those who, we didn't have podcasts long ago. Things like that, embracing some of the technology that allows for more than just a couple seconds of a story, but a richer, deeper, longer story.
Okay. So how has being an applied developmental psychologist helped in your work with mentors and mentees?
Well, an applied developmental psychologist is someone who looks not at pathology, what's wrong with us, or what could go wrong or should go wrong, but what should we expect that's good. And I'm an aging specialist, so I look at what we should be looking forward to. And along that developmental trajectory, right in the middle, is mentorship. And we're built to give back. This is how all of our ancestors passed on their stories, values, and culture. And it's how we keep a piece of ourselves relevant in the world. It's how we make our mark. So this stage is called generativity. And I really believe that by embarking on a story of looking at how we're built to give back and why we want to do it, we're going to engage in more mentorship. And along that line, we're going to really connect more and want to learn more about each other.
All right. How did you decide to become an applied developmental psychologist?
Oh, that was a long road. I had a grandma who was the coolest grandma in the world. I would visit her in Florida, and she was the kind of grandma that I didn't even have to take clothes with me because she wore the coolest clothes in town. So as a teenager, I would fly down there. And around 19 or 20, I went down to visit her, and she was disheveled. She was grouchy and irritable. And she wasn't herself. And I talked to somebody at the independent living facility where she was, and they said, we're going to fix your grandma. And I was like, what do you mean? And they said, she's depressed. And I did not know what that meant. I did not know what a psychologist was. She said, I'm a psychologist. She's on a med that, was given to her for her COPD, and it doesn't work. It's making her feel depressed. By the time you come back, she'll be better. I came back and was not expecting to see her better. And she was so better that she had a boyfriend. So sign me up. This is what I want to do. I want to fix grandmas. So I changed my trajectory and took the long route to finish my undergraduate degree. And then embarked on research in aging and for my PhD because that one person fixed my grandma, and I wanted to then be somebody who could do that. So that really got me started in the whole process, and I really haven't looked back.
Are you as confident as that person was? It seems pretty confident to be able to look at you and say, when you come back, your grandma will be better. Is that the feeling that you have now?
I do. There was a lot of mystery in the 1990s when it was the early 90s, like 1990 or 91. No one knew anything about aging. People who were 45 were considered to be really old at that time. And so when she said that, I was unsure about it. But now, having been in the field and knowing that we have more to look forward to than not, and knowing that, yes, indeed, if you have depression, you can get better, that we can get better from a lot of illnesses that in 1990 we couldn't. And so I am confident with a lot of that. I've seen so many people who suffered from depression or anxiety or other things, and they get better.
Okay. So you've been a co-editor of the Spiritual Assessment and Intervention with Older Adults, and a frequent expert guest on syndicated and local talk shows, podcasts, print and online media outlets. So what do you enjoy discussing the most when you appear as an expert guest?
Well, when I appear as an expert guest, I love to talk about mentoring and aging and how those go together and what we have to look forward to. I can tell you that when I go to cocktail parties, I don't like to talk about aging because people run away from me. So I love being able to talk about that in a forum where you can't run away.
All right. So you were a TEDx speaker at some point. Tell me about that experience.
So I was asked to present in my idea about aging and mentorship, I think in 2016, and I think I presented it in 2017. And the concept that I was trying to get across to people is that aging is not something that we should fear. And it was a new topic for the TEDx group that I was presenting to. So it was kind of exciting. So what I was telling them was that we all look at, and this is then, we still look at it the same way, but not as much, but that we look at aging as an inverted V, where we have a steep incline of our physicality and then a slow, steady decline. And that's really what scares people. But if I were to give you a stock portfolio option to choose, that's the one that we would all reject. But when we look at it for our lives, we accept that as what we are offered. When in reality, applied developmental psychologists have really been looking at our emotional trajectory. It just wasn't talked about. And that is that we start at the same place we do physically, and our emotional abilities increase through our lifespan and they never decline. So just when we're at our mature level is when the apples start to fall from the tree and we start to give our wisdom back. But no one tied those two things together so that people can realize you may not be as physically fit like I could when I was younger. But I always tell my the college students I teach, you can outrun me, but I'm happier. And that's something that midlifers start to really understand. So the TEDx talk was really to show people that aging is not just a one trick pony of just being our physical trajectory, but within that emotional trajectory comes things like the desire to give back, to mentor, to leave our legacy, to take all of that stuff that gets put into us like a Tupperware container as we're checking our boxes. We want to release it and give it out into the world. And that's one way we do that is through mentorship. It makes us feel relevant and useful and helpful. And that was why I did the TED Talk, so that I could really get that information out to people so they could see that midlife and beyond is actually one of our most exciting times in our lives.
Why are you happier now than in your youth? What's different now about being at this stage of your life?
I know who I am and I know what I'm good at, and I can avoid the things that I'm bad at. So I get this richness in my life. I have children who I like, and I have friends who I have, I've sort of sloughed off all of the meaningless connections that I had, and I've stuck with a smaller, tighter group of meaningful connections. So I've made a world for myself, which is what we all do, that is surrounding ourselves with what we're good at, what we like, and who we like. And so that's why I'm happier now, and that's why I expect to continue to remain happier.
Okay. And one of the projects you've done that you do is the Mentor Project. And you brought top experts in STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics, business, law, all the way to astronauts and astrophysicists, to IP lawyers and the 2020 Inventor of the Year, to mentor kids from around the world. And they do all this for free. How did you get them all involved in this project?
So, as I was sort of studying generativity, which is that midlife stage that we should expect to hit, and just to sort of solidify that, we know those who don't hit that stage. That's Ebenezer Scrooge, the guy who had everything, but he wasn't happy. He was a self made guy. He lived in a mansion. He had servants taking care of his needs, but he was miserable. And as soon as he gave back, he felt better. He felt great. He felt joy. So I was looking at mentorship to see, what do mentors really think and feel? So I interviewed about 45 of them. And it turned out that so many people felt that they had no access to mentees. And it was a distress to them. So we hear all of these calls to action: go out and find a mentor. Well, neither could find each other. We just weren't hearing about the mentors. So I had been told all of the top leaders are too important. They are going to say no to mentoring because they have too much to do. It'll be a burden. And so when I started to reach out to people, they said no. Beswick, one of the fathers of the firewall, said to me, I'm ready to retire from Bell Labs and I'm going to live on a farm. I have no access to anybody. I'm going to feel completely useless and irrelevant. I need to start getting in front of kids who can give back to them. And it wasn't just him. It was all these other people. So we had a woman from NASA and Bill, and we just had this small group of people that we wanted to test the waters and see if he would want them, if they would enjoy it. And it was a blast. We were just like a bunch of nerds having fun. And then all of this time, everybody kept saying to me, but go ahead, have your fun. No one else is going to want to join. And then a woman named Jen Snow joined us. And we went from 10 to 60 in 6 months, then to 8.
Wow.
It's not like you can walk to a park and say, hey, kid, you want a mentor. It's not going to work out well. So the Mentor Project was formed based on, we now know that that term generativity is real and it works. And so people come and they want to do it for free. We gave out $3 million worth of mentorship hours in 2024. And 100% of that was free to people in 5 countries. So it's real. It's kind of exciting to me to know that those theories actually work and they're real.
I was going to ask you about the $3 million in mentoring hours. And that was part of your accomplishments in 2024. In the 5 countries, you mentioned mentorships, original research presented and published. So are you satisfied with those results? And what are your goals for 2025?
Oh, I want to get to 5 million at least. I want to grow it. And I'm really hoping that we can get out to more students around the world, that we can reach more students in the US, and that not just the students, but that the mentors, we know that they will continue to feel amazing. They want to mentor more. We require 2 hours a month and they all want to give way, way, way more than that. So I'm really hoping that we can get them as connected as possible because they're really enjoying the ride.
Can you explain the 4 programs at the Mentor Project and the role of each program?
So we have a few programs and we're still growing. We have the research group, and that was amazing. It's run by Jennifer Wisdom and Cynthia Morrow. And these 2 PhD researchers taught high school students, one in Mexico City and one in Virginia, and another mentee who's in New York City, how to do systematic review. Look, I got my PhD and I don't know how to do it. So these high school kids learned how to do this, and they were able to go and have this presented at a major conference. And then they're having, I think it'll be about 4 articles in peer-reviewed journals that are going to be submitted. 2 were already accepted. But that to me was amazing, to think that at 15 you can do something that most people don't do it as a PhD, was pretty cool. So that's one thing. And they studied mentorship so we could further the field. Another one is the Innovation Lab. And the pretty cool thing with that one was that we've had people patent, more than 20 times and start their own companies and do stuff with their mentors that changes their lives. So that was really amazing. People can't afford to mentor and they get to do it for free with the Mentor Project. And so they have all that guidance there for them. Also have Tanzania, our project. We send Justin Thompson, who's with Schultz Creative Studios, so he's that draws Snoopy. And he went to a small school. It has 500 students in Sharati, Tanzania, to teach them art a couple of years ago. It was such a success that he went back the year later. And that was such a success that just this year in January, he went to Brooklyn to Flatbush to teach in a school district what he was teaching in Tanzania. And so that program is continuing. And it's really incredibly lovely that we are able to get all of this out there and going. We also offer one mentorship. Contact us through the Become a Mentee. They can meet one-on-one with anybody they want. If you want to meet with an astronaut, if you want to meet with an artist, whoever you want for mentorship, you can meet with them.
That's really cool. And what is hackathon? I did see that listed.
Sorry about that. Yes, we haven't done one in the last year, but especially during COVID, we did a ton, and it was so amazing. We had Javier Francario, who is from Argentina, and he came on board and brought all kinds of students from different countries, like Argentina, and from an area in Russia, Siberia, and from the US. And he got all of these students to work together, meaning mixed up. They didn't know who they were going to be meeting with. So kids were working together, and one young 14-year-old had such an amazing idea that she was featured in Forbes because she had some really cool cybersecurity idea. And the amazing thing was she was with a bunch of older guys, and here she was like sitting on her bed, and she put her ideas out there, and everyone went behind her, and just unbelievable to see how far she went with that hackathon idea. So tons of ideas came from people that were unexpected. These were liberal arts students. They were doing a STEM project, and to see people go out of their comfort zone to do new things. Kids ended up making friends with other students from other countries that lasted beyond the hackathon. So I really felt amazing about it.
That's all so cool. So you're also an author, and your book is called The Mentorship Edge. Can you tell the audience about that book and the process of writing it?
Oh, sure. I wanted to write it in 2015. Nobody was really that interested in mentorship at that point. It took quite a while to really garner the interest. And what I found was that a lot of people hijacked the term mentorship and mentor, and it's used so loosely that I finally realized I have to write this book and get it out there. So I was contacted by a publisher, and I said, okay, I'll do it. And in it, I really wanted people to know what mentorship actually is, the real definition of it. Because some people, like, they walk their dog and they'll say, I'm mentoring my dog. It's really that loosely used. And to be able to define it, say what it is, what it isn't, and to introduce something that most people don't really understand, and that is that we are literally all mentoring all the time. If you look to your left and you look to the right, the person you're sitting next to is a potential mentor or mentee to you at any given moment. And every time we offer help to someone or someone offers help to us, it's a potential mentoring that we've engaged in. And also, it isn't just for work. Mentoring is, really part of our personal development that is key to it. We feel good about ourselves when we mentor. Most of us don't think of the value of that. We think of it only as a career ladder leap, and it was never intended to be that. It just happens to be how we define it now.
So what's the difference between mentorship and coaching?
Ooh, good one. Okay, if you are paid, you are not a mentor. And people can argue this with me until they're blue. If you're paid, you're not a mentor. You are a coach, you are an advisor. So a coach does a lot of the similar things that a mentor does, but they have an extrinsic motivator. Their motivation is through their pay. And if you are a mentor, you're doing it because you are intrinsically motivated to work with someone. You trust that person. It's a meaningful connection. And so that's really what carries the mentorship, because in mentorship, you're taking a piece of you and putting it into somebody else, and it's living on in them. In coaching, that's not necessarily the case. You're transferring information or you're transferring a skill, but it doesn't necessarily have to live on in that person. And you don't have to necessarily like that person. You don't have to necessarily trust that person in all the same ways. So it often looks like it, but it's like brownies that's made without sugar. It's not going to really taste like it.
So coaches are paid, mentors they have a different motivation.
Yeah.
All right. So you received an international award for your research on depression identification, as well as serving for 9 years on the board of the State Society of Aging in New York. And you were the president of that organization in 2008. So what can we look forward to as we age?
We can look forward to being happier, more fulfilled, to feeling purpose, to feeling like we matter in the world. We should look forward to having connections that mean something to us, that those friends that we've cultivated should be people that we almost bring in at the same level as family, and that we should feel that our footprint is deep and that it's going to last for many generations.
All right. So what can people do to prepare for retirement as, again, part of the aging process?
Good question. I get this one a lot with people that I coach. So people who are getting ready to retire, what I've found in the US in particular is that we have an identity card. And that's like our business card, but we have made it our identity. So before retiring, people should really start to find out what other areas they identify with. Some people really enjoy certain things like the arts or whatever else in their life. What else is on that identity card other than your job? So start finding out what that is, because that's going to be a way that you can engage in generatively, whether that's through philanthropy or volunteering or mentoring. So a lot of people say, I'm going to sit on a board, or they say, I'm going to spend time with my grandchildren, or I'm going to volunteer at a zoo, or whatever it is that people want to do. They should be thinking of that before retirement, because when retirement comes, it hits a lot of people who haven't thought about that, and they feel useless and irrelevant, and they feel powerless. And, to think about it early allows you to keep all of those things intact as you retire.
Okay. So how can we bring generations together to work to solve challenges?
One way is through mentorship. The other way is to really make sure, if we're in the workplace, that we are making sure that we're not seeing life through our own generational lens. A lot of people think that there's no value in a younger generation, but if you're trying to sell something and you want to sell it to a different generation, viewpoints. So it's really the biggest thing that we need to do is to make those tables at the workplace that we're sitting at have multiple generations. We also need to make sure that we're mentoring, and that's mentoring other generations and seeing the value in the other generation, not just seeing the value in our own. And the other thing is to really understand the generational wisdom that comes from our families. So multi-generations and families are often, disregarded as so important. Engaging with parents and grandchildren, aunts and uncles and grandnieces and nephews, as many generations as you can get together, is incredibly important, because that makes people understand that the world is a bigger place than just their own little bubble.
All right. And who are the mentees that you work with?
We work with students who are kindergarten through graduate school. So you can be 36, 56, or you can be 5. It's really a wide range of mentee levels. So it's pretty much everyone. We really didn't want to leave anybody out.
Okay. That sounds like everybody. So what are lateral mentorships and hierarchical mentorships?
A hierarchical mentorship is the traditional. This is the word that most people think of when they hear a mentor. If you say mentor, most people think of work, and they think I'm looking 2 levels up and that person is going to pull me up and open some doors for me. And if I'm the mentee, I'm wanting that because I just want to get up the ladder. And if I'm a mentor, that's the nameless, faceless individual that everybody's looking for, that most people think is a burden to reach out to. That's hierarchical mentoring. Lateral mentoring is everyone everywhere around us. And this is the most explosive kind of mentorship. Our tech revolution happened because of lateral mentoring. If you are an entrepreneur, you only can rely on lateral mentoring. There's no boss above you if you're forming your own company. And that's the same with anything tech. So anytime you think of something that was an innovation That's usually the result of lateral mentoring. Anytime you've tried to solve a problem and you utilized a friend or someone in your network, that's lateral mentoring. The founding of the
Hmm.
United States was based on lateral mentoring. All of those individuals were experts in different areas and came together as lateral mentors. There was no boss at the time that led that. So that's the difference between the two. I guarantee you that if you engage in lateral mentoring, you will see likely more success, even hierarchically, just if you engage in hierarchical.
Okay. How can an average person connect in their community by becoming a mentor?
Oh, so many ways. Look, if you are involved in a religious institution with that is the perfect place. Then you can meet other people and look around, and if somebody is, you see somebody in need of your expertise, you go help them. You say, "Hey, I'd like to mentor you." You don't have to say it in that way. You can say, "I'd like to help you," and vice versa. It's there. It's the Rotary. There's a Rotary everywhere. It's all of those clubs and organizations that are in your community. It's any kind of a formal or informal organization. So it can be through sports. It can be through scouts. If you're an adult, any of the Lions clubs, Rotary, any of those. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get involved in mentorship, and it often feels good to do it in a group environment. But you can also just all on your own. You can be, your own cowboy going out and just mentoring all on your own if you want.
The Lone Ranger.
Yeah, the lone mentor.
Okay, final question of the day. This one's much more personal to you. So, what are one or two things that you personally want to pass down to the next generation?
I want to pass down to my kids in particular that they have a lot to look forward to and they can't do anything without connections. Meaning, and not connections the way that people think of it, like I better have a thick Rolodex to help me out, but connections where you care about somebody and they care about you. And so that is really what I'd like to pass on. If I were to have a stage to be able to talk like I am with you and to others continuously to say, connections are our biggest asset. That's what I'd like to pass down to others, that you need to be connected and that you need to be putting a bit of yourself out into the world.
Okay, that sounds like a good legacy to leave behind and a good way to wrap up this episode. So, our guest today has been applied developmental psychologist, Dr. Deborah Heiser. Deborah, thank you so much for being here today with me and sharing your knowledge with my audience.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you and everything you're doing.
Thank you. So, if you don't already follow me on Spotify or some other podcast platform, I would appreciate it if you would do that and then share this episode with a friend. I'd greatly appreciate it. So that's it for today's episode of Stories from Real Life. Join us again next time for another chance to learn from each other's stories and journeys. Until then, don't forget to shine your light wherever you go.